You can walk into a room and feel it shift. No one has said anything yet. No one has looked at you directly, but you already know who's tense, who's pretending, who's holding something back. You notice the pause before someone answers, the micro expression that flashes across their face, the way their voice drops half a tone when they say, "I'm fine." And most of the time, you don't even know how you know. Growing up, you may have been told you were too sensitive, too observant, that you read too much into things. Maybe people laughed when you pointed out what was obvious to you but invisible to everyone else. Maybe you learned to keep your insights to yourself. Society doesn't always celebrate this kind of awareness. It calls it overthinking. It calls it anxious. It calls it guarded. If you don't easily relax around people, they might assume you're distant. If you pick up on subtle shifts in mood, they might say you're dramatic. If you anticipate someone's needs before they speak, they might say you're intense. But what if none of that is weakness? Psychology suggests that children who grow up emotionally ignored often become highly attuned to subtle cues. When your feelings weren't consistently acknowledged, your nervous system adapted. It learned to scan the environment. It learned to predict reactions. It learned that safety depended on reading between the lines. Research shows that when emotional validation is inconsistent, a child's brain becomes hyper-aware of tone, body language, and micro-changes in behavior. Your nervous system learned this because it had to. It was trying to keep you connected, trying to avoid conflict, trying to make sense of silence. If no one explained what they were feeling, you became the one who figured it out. When affection was unpredictable, you studied patterns. When tension filled the room, but no one talked about it, you memorized the signs. When your own emotions were minimized, you turned outward and became fluent in everyone else's. That skill didn't disappear when you grew up. Now you can tell when someone is losing interest before they admit it. You sense when a friend is upset, even if their words are polite. You know when a co-worker feels threatened. You often understand people better than they understand themselves. And sometimes that makes you tired. Because reading people instantly means you're rarely surprised. It means you see the cracks in the surface. It means small talk feels almost unbearable when you already sense the deeper story underneath. There's a powerful realization here. You are not overly sensitive. You are perceptive because you were trained to be. That training may not have been intentional. No one sat you down and taught you emotional decoding. But your environment did. Silence taught you. Inconsistency taught you. Being overlooked taught you. And what started as protection evolved into intelligence. Think about your relationships now. You're often the one who notices when someone feels left out. You adjust your tone to keep the peace. You anticipate misunderstandings before they happen. You can sit in a conversation and track not just what's being said, but what's being avoided. In work settings, you probably read the room before you speak. You know who holds real influence. You sense unspoken hierarchies. You understand when it's safe to share an idea and when it's better to wait. In friendships, you may be the quiet anchor, the one people confide in, the one who can see through defensiveness without attacking it. You don't just hear words, you hear subtext. And yet, you might also struggle to let people read you the same way. When you grew up emotionally ignored, expressing your own needs may have felt pointless or risky or simply unfamiliar. So you became self-contained, independent, capable. You learned not to expect too much. That independence can look like strength on the outside, and it is strength, but it was built early. Psychology would call this adaptation. Your brain did what it needed to do to survive your emotional landscape. It sharpened your perception. It strengthened your internal processing. It created a kind of quiet radar that rarely turns off. The deeper insight is this: your ability to read people instantly is not just about defense anymore. It's about depth. You see layers, you notice contradictions, you understand that someone can be kind and insecure at the same time, confident and afraid, loving and avoidant. You don't think in simple categories because you've lived in emotional complexity. That kind of awareness is rare. Most people move through conversations at face value. You don't. You look for coherence. You look for alignment between words and energy. And when something feels off, you trust that instinct, even if you can't immediately explain it. There may have been times when you doubted yourself, when someone told you you're imagining things, when you felt silly for noticing what others ignored. But over time, you've probably realized something important. You're usually right. Not because you're cynical, not because you assume the worst, but because you've spent years studying human behavior in real time. You learned through necessity. You refined it through experience. And here's the part that brings relief. You are not behind because you're cautious. You are not broken because you don't open up quickly. You are not cold because you observe before you trust. You are wired for depth. Your nervous system prefers meaning over noise. It prefers authenticity over performance. It prefers quiet consistency over loud promises. That wiring may have come from a difficult place, but it has evolved into discernment, and discernment is power. You don't need 100 friends. You need a few people who feel real. You don't need constant validation. You need sincerity. You don't need chaos to feel alive. You need emotional clarity. As you move through life, something shifts. The skill that once protected you becomes something you can choose how to use. You don't have to scan every room for danger anymore. You can soften. You can let your guard lower in safe spaces. You can allow yourself to be seen slowly. Your perception doesn't have to disappear. It just doesn't have to carry the weight of survival anymore. There is strength in being the person who understands the unspoken. There is quiet influence in being the one who notices what others miss. And there is dignity in knowing that your depth was earned. If any of this feels familiar, you are not strange. You are perceptive because you had to be. And now you get to decide how that awareness shapes your future. Trust what you sense. Trust the pauses you notice. Trust the subtle shifts you feel. They are part of you. And if you value this kind of thoughtful exploration of human behavior, there's more here to discover.